is that Sutta Anguttara Nikay's 2.5. And this is what Aryavamsa translated. You might like it.
Yeah, read.
It says, Bhikkhus, I've come to know two things: non-contentment in wholesome phenomena, and not shrinking back in striving. As one who does not shrink back in striving, I strove. And there comes that stock phrase, certainly let the skin, tendons and bones remain, and let the flesh and the blood in the body dry up.
Sure.
For whatever can be attained by manly strength, effort and exertion, there will not be a resting place for effort, for so long as this has not been reached, that attainment. Like that non-contentment in wholesome phenomena, not being
Not finding content in it.
not being satisfied
Well, for as long as you're not finding content in wholesome phenomena, means you're still within the domain of sensuality. Because one of the defining traits of sensuality is to expect things to provide you with pleasure. Or rather, pleasure is a result of things you're engaged with. But wholesome states don't work like that. The ones that are not underlined by asavas and so on. Which means you can stay with wholesome states all you want, but they won't provide you with pleasure. You need to discern the contentment. It's the same. That's what we were talking in regard to jhanas, in regard to pleasure renunciation, in regard to seclusion from sensuality. And that is quite an important thing that many people could probably recognize, but the practice of meditation usually revolves around replacing the pleasures I'm used to with a new set of pleasures, with more peaceful, more refined, but still expecting meditation to give you the pleasure back. But you'll get the pleasure back only once you start discerning it on the basis of wholesome. And that pleasure is pleasure that's not underlined by the craving, which is the pleasure of sensuality. So having non-contentment in wholesome states means being still within the sensuality, even if you're perfectly restrained.
Still belies the attitude, I'm restrained in order to get more.
Yeah, the attitude of expecting things to do it to you, so to speak,
my
is
restraint
still
will give
there.
me pleasure
Yeah.
or something, I'll get a result of it. Even if it's I expect the bliss of Nibbana.
Sure.
It seems like
Sure.
it's conceived.
Yeah. No, that's why it was that, what was the other one? The jhana, yeah. It was with you I was speaking.
Yeah, you can't
The theme of jhana. When the Buddha said, by not steadying your mind in the theme of jhana, you don't get the jhana. By not basically finding the pleasure in the theme of renunciation, you won't get the jhana. So it's not just a question of I'm renouncing and then jhana happens to me. You need to develop it through that discernment of wholesome, discernment of seclusion, discernment of freedom from debt, and all those symbols that Buddha gave. But unless that's done, it won't happen to you. Because whatever happens to you is going to be on account of sensuality.
So it seems to me that it's almost like, obviously the Buddha described two pleasures, like the blameworthy and the one that's not blameworthy. Blameworthy being obviously it's something you pursue, but the non-blameworthy is more like a recognition, so to say. It's without that same movement.
Exactly, and that's why we would say you shouldn't fear that type of pleasure, because it will result in wisdom. With the right view already, that's all you need really. Pleasure apart from senses. That's why also the neutral feeling is pleasant when it's known. When there is a recognition of it, you feel it pleasantly. When there isn't, you feel it painfully. So the knowledge determines how you feel it, basically.
I like to try and designate it, I think, almost like the pleasure of not being pulled. I feel like that gets the meaning across.
And you have to basically, through drilling, learn how to start appreciating it because of the habits of the pull and sensuality and expectations and the views.
Right, I can see that come up in myself sometimes. I've been trying to think about the Dhamma, or I've been focusing on keeping restraint, and there's sometimes this kind of subtle notion that, okay, once this is done, once I'm done with this restraining, now I'll go back to the normal thing.
Yeah.
Failing
Did
to
you? Did I give you that talk? Was it with you? It was with you. Abiding in non-activity.
No. You gave me the one about thinking.
Okay, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Abiding in non-activity.
We've spoken about big thrust I got from it.
Oh yeah. Although for him it was more like just trying to highlight the state of Putujana for him, so he can kind of stop doing it. But the no, this is more like even people who necessarily who there's this whole kind of assumption of doing it, and in the suttas when it's like, oh, abiding in non-activity, which is almost like its definition of jhana, non-activity. But it's not just you don't move your body; it's non-action even by your mind, as in thoughts come and go, thinking and pondering, vitaka vichara, but you are not doing it. So there is no intention towards action by any outlet, and then you learn to value that as a state of peace, as a state of pleasure, as a state of dispassion. And you cultivate that, any other habits of sensuality that Sotapanna or Arya Savaka might have had are going to fade. Because once you sort of steady your mind in the theme of that non-activity, not needing to do anything, and not doing anything out of habit either, like just sit. You're not doing jhanas either, for that matter. Oh, I'm doing my jhana now. No, you're not doing anything. Oh, but you don't get distracted either, because even distraction requires intentional giving in. It requires you to do it, to give it a push. But you're not doing even that, so clarity of mindfulness is the natural result of it.
So to clarify, you mentioned that no activity through any outlet. Of course, we can still say, as the suttas mentioned, one can still move their body. They don't like get paralyzed. So but I seem to understand it as like it's on the level of like that taking up of the intention, which is called the do, which you're referring to as the doing.
Sure. Yeah, the movement of the body would be governed by the arisen significance of an arisen thing. You need to go to the toilet. Hunger requires eating, but you won't be doing it.
Yeah.
That's it. Hence the clarity of mindfulness, unshakable mindfulness. Not because you're holding it so tightly that it cannot shake. It's just because it went beyond things that shake. So it's unshakable.
It's like the cessation of action, except in jhana, if you're not an arhat, you can fall.
Sure. Yeah.
Again, you were saying about seeing the extent of the danger of sensuality, because then you have to discern the safety in your non-engagement with sensuality.
It's the safety is implied if you're discerning the danger.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yes, the safety is implied automatically, so you don't really have to.
Because unless the danger is discerned, you won't be looking for safety because you don't feel you're under threat.
Yeah.
That's just how it works. So you make the effort to discern the danger, then immediately you are starting to value sense of safety. Then you might then turn, once you get that recognition, and start looking, okay, what is the ultimate safety from it? And then focus on the safety as a theme, but it's still, then that safety is what sort of implies the danger that you're trying to get away from. It's not like you fully discern the danger, okay, and now I have to go and figure out the safety from it. The full discernment of the danger implies knowledge of safety already, or at least where the safety is.
So, discerning the full extent of sensuality is discerning the full extent of the danger, which is seeing the freedom, the safety.
Yeah. So if you're discerning the danger of sensuality, you're immediately kind of developing a recognition of safety. Or by trying to develop the recognition of safety, you're reminding yourself of the danger of sensuality. Either way, you take one, the other one is there being developed, basically. Whichever you want to put first, it's fine.
It is seeing the safety in renunciation, isn't it?
Sorry?
Is it seeing the safety in renunciation?
Oh yeah. No, it's like finding pleasure in renunciation, replacing the pleasures of sensuality with pleasures of renunciation. But I'm more like talking about to the level of first jhana, whereby you surmount the whole domain of sensuality. Through recognizing that's like chitta viveka, like, I'm safe here.
Mhm.
That's already like a direct insight based on the recognition of the danger of sensuality. But yeah, of course, you wouldn't arrive at it without
Still,
renunciation.
it makes sense to me to see, like, if I see the danger, then simply letting go is the solution. Renunciation is the solution.
Oh no, renunciation is a prerequisite. You wouldn't be able even to see the danger of sensuality if you haven't already been taking on renunciation, restraint, sila on faith.
Well, maybe renunciation may mean different things.
Maybe.
But renunciation in terms of not looking for happiness there, letting go, relinquishing.
Okay, yeah, sure. I see
Because
what you mean.
If the thing is,
Yeah.
if there's no safety and happiness to be found in that, then
But
I don't know.
the difference I would sort of highlight there is that if you truly see the dangers in sensuality, you don't have to do any renunciation. Your mind is already giving it up by understanding the danger of it.
Yeah, makes sense.
That's what I was trying to explain. I think that's what you meant with the question. That's why the Buddha would say that the full understanding of gratification, of the danger and the escape means the full and then that person doesn't need to be renounced. And the Buddha would say because his behavior has been developed beforehand, as in the sila and the virtue and so on. So for as long as a person needs to remind himself that this is not good, means they're not free from their domain. It requires their action, it requires management, it requires a counterpart, which has to be that way. But what I'm encouraging is to, while you're doing that, that's the talk we had that I wanted to give you. While you're doing that management and reminders, you actually want to find a place where it is safe, as in you don't have to defend it, because it's safe. If something is safe, only if you go and fight back, it's not safe. If you need to defend it, if you need to manage it, if you need to cover it, if you need to pull it, it's not safe. That's not the definition of a high ground which cannot be flooded. So that doesn't mean you dismiss the renunciation, the abandonment. You were referring to it as abandonment. Yeah. Doesn't mean you dismiss it, but you want to look past it even further. While you're doing it, you want to find a place where won't require doing even that. And then you can say, okay, now I'm truly safe because I don't even have to defend it.
But this, again, discerning the sensual domain equals.
Yeah, discerning the danger, discerning the extent of sensuality, the extent of its flood, so to speak, as a single phenomenon, not like reminding yourself of all the aspects that you've been through. That would equal safety. Like full understanding of gratification, full understanding of danger means full understanding of safety.
So how does this tie in with that? You were saying, I think it does tie in some way, but restraint is more primordial than sensuality. That's basically what.
Yeah. So how do you think it ties in?
Well, that's it, because you have to, you do surmount perceptions, sensuality as a whole. You surmount it by discerning it, that whole domain. But you only surmount it through stepping into a bigger phenomenon.
But why would it be more primordial?
It's effortless?
Sorry?
Because it's effortless?
Yeah, more or less. Well, because if it weren't, you wouldn't be able to surmount sensuality. You wouldn't be able to free yourself from it. And also what we spoke before, because things are, in the nature, first, asubha, because of the impermanence, because of the non-satisfaction and so on. So any notion of sensuality is literally plastered over it, while it's still that asubha is there. So in the same, restraint reveals it, reveals the actual repulsive aspect, even of attractive things. Hence restraint reveals what's more primordial. Hence restraint is more primordial. Or puts you in touch with what's first, not what's second, which is sensuality. But of course, you wouldn't arrive there without the restraint just being done first. You had to say no to it. You don't know why, you don't know how, it hurts. But the Buddha said there is no Dhamma without Sila, so you just start doing it. But you're not doing it for its own sake, you're doing it so to see, so that you can stop doing it. But then of course, you will be it, so you won't have to. You won't be stopping anything basically. It will be your natural mode of behavior. Non-sensuality and restraint. Because if the repulsive aspect of sensual things is not actually more fundamental than sensuality, freedom from sensuality will not be possible. Because you can't fabricate. You don't create the Dhamma on top of things like there was nothing. No, the way is out, you need to discern it. You know, as the Buddha said, the path is there, you need to find it. And that path wouldn't be there if repulsive is not more fundamental than attractive. That's just how things are ordered. And that's what you're supposed to discern, and that's how you get free from sensuality, not by deciding and saying no to it.
If anything, is it right to say that sensuality is fabricated?
Well, it is, but I don't want to say that because then people think, okay, if all I have to do is stop thinking about my sensuality, and that's how I'm fabricated. Sensuality is a view. It's upadana, which means the distortion is there and it's real as such for you. As the Buddha said, the inversion of perception. Yeah, from Arahant's point of view, it's an inversion. Putujana state is an inversion. It's like second putting first, first putting second. But Putujana, that's the only view he has. So he has no reference point what's first, what's second. So unless he sees that rightly, in other words, unless he abandons it, he won't see it rightly. So that's why he has to start with that as a starting point. He can't say, oh, well, this sensuality is secondary and the non-sensuality is first, because he doesn't see either. So he needs to start sensuality is first for me. It's a mistake, but until I undo that mistake, that is my form of existence. That is my bhava. That is the extent of my bhava, the sensual being. Do you see what I mean? In that sense, it's more primordial.
Yeah, sensual being, yeah.
Because it reveals the more primordial order, basically.
Here, bhava means experience, is it?
Bhava, yeah, I suppose. I mean, being, literally. Means the extent of your being.
Remember, you're saying like, there's more, where you can see it, there's more non-attraction, generally, but you don't notice that. Oh, nice bowl, nice cup, or whatever.
I mean, you might notice that, but in order for it to play part in reverting back the inversion of sensuality, you need to see it as, in the same sense when we started speaking about Paticcasamuppada. It's the same principle. You need to see it as simultaneously present and determining your sensuality. If you see left or right from it, it's a second thing. You can't compare it. In the same sense, your whole life, you speaking, talking, walking, eating, depends on your beating heart that you have no say in. In the same sense, your sensual projects, sensual attractions, sensual views, sensual cravings, sensual pleasures depend upon presence of things that are actually repulsive. Simultaneous presence, not after. It's not that ugly becomes really beautiful. While you're with the beautiful, in its heart, it's ugly, but you're not seeing that relationship between that heart and what you're looking at. And that's why you're not free from it. That's where you can look all the Asubha pictures you want. Or you can look at one, but if you see that right principle, then you'll know. Then it's like Asubha Nimitta. As in you recognize peripherally, discerned that signs of, that's where Asubha is. You found a place for it. But it's not just another object of your eyes and smell and so on. Whereby I will not look at the ugly. I will not look at the beautiful, I will look at the ugly. But I'm still looking and I'm still not understanding the nature of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. The whole sensual domain you're not understanding. So you're just replacing the objects of your eyes basically. Failing to understand the nature of it. So in that sense, yeah, you can, like, which is more? Ugly or beautiful in the world? Just go in the town, which is more? Ugly people or beautiful people? Ugly. non-attractive. That is the basis for everything. But if you see it in a comparative manner, it's almost like an information, makes no difference. But if you see it as a basis upon which beautiful exists, to the extent that the basis determines it, then okay. Because you can't have the principle of inversion unless the two things that are inverted simultaneously. Inversion is not one then the other, it's one and two. Inversion is what's first, it's second, what's second, it's first, while both are still there. That's a definition of inversion. My solar inverter, it inverts the electricity that comes to another electricity that you can use simultaneously. If the electricity that comes disappears, there is no inversion anymore. So you need to have two things for that. You just have to stop mixing the order up. Because for Patujana, or for somebody who's not free from sensual being, first is beautiful. Beautiful is first. But you won't find ugly as second, you need to find it within the heart of that first is beautiful. Without abandoning first is beautiful, you need to see its foundations are actually fully dependent, determined, rooted in the ugly, the repulsive. And that's how it stops being ugly and beautiful, it becomes really ugly and slightly less ugly. But all it's repulsive, all of it. That's where the similar principle, but that's what I think maybe Sariputta the Buddha said. Pleasure counts as pain in the discipline of the Noble Ones. Sariputta. Pleasure counts as pain, and pain counts like a deadly arrow, as in it's all bad. But it's all bad, but doesn't pertain to you anymore because you abandoned it. So it's not like that you need to be like, oh, it's all bad.
That's sort of what I was saying as fabricating, sensuality being fabricated. Like,
no, it is, yeah, sure, I agree. But as I qualified it, you don't want to say that because usually implies, fabrication. You know, I'm fabricating it now. All I need to do is stop fabricating it. No, all you need to do is uproot that thing. Then you won't be able to fabricate sensuality even if you want to. Because you uprooted the inversion. That's why for Anagami and Arahant it's not a matter of choice that they can't engage in sensual behavior. It's the state of their being.
You get a lot of these weird translations of like Sankara, like fabricating the conditioned reality.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Oh, I heard even more flamboyant translations than that.
no, if anything, because of ignorance, fabrication is like, it's already there. Like,
that's the whole thing. All of it is already there for
Yeah.
Patujana. He needs to reverse the order. Anuloma, Patiloma. Part of the same things.
but yeah, but what I was trying to mean was that I've noticed that when beautiful, what I consider to be beautiful, start to become ugly, I would try to look for beautiful in that.
Sure.
I
Sure.
would try to build up a
Because the
beautiful-
the inversion principle is where you act from. That's the assumption. That's basically the central upadana. Exactly that. Where your experience is actually showing you ugly left and right. Yet you keep discerning only beautiful within it because that's all you see. But that's your doing. That's why the Buddha said the beautiful things in the world are not sensuality. It's your thought and lust in regard to it that man's sensuality is there.
That's your doing. That's your
Yeah,
doing.
exactly.
But the
Yeah,
the
yeah.
asubha
Yeah.
is not your doing.
Asubha is not your doing. Asubha is recognition that undermines your own doing of sensuality. And then you can't do it. But in order to fully undermine, you need to start seeing the danger in what you were doing or what you want to do. Because if you don't, you're still going to be attracted to it. Yeah, but exactly, yeah. It's a form of doing in the level we spoke about, not like, doing, sweeping the leaves or something. Just even on the mental level.
I had something related to this come up. Like I was thinking, paticca samuppada with this is, I thought it as referring to the principle of whatever I attend, it is with something else, a background to the attention, so to say. But I think in light of this conversation, I had some confusion, I think, because potentially I was over prioritizing the attention given to like sense perceptions. Like it seems to me the idea that when I attend something, I think Nyanavir mentioned like the mind as its object can attend. He called them like universals or natures of things, so to speak. Because I was confused by my definition. Because like let's say being, I can't obviously attend being like I attend stuff in the room. Yeah. So how I thought in light of my paradigm, how is it then that I would discern its dependence on assumption?
Well, first, just when you attend something, then that Paticcasamuppada would be that thing you're attending is determined by something else. That's true as a principle, but in practice, that thing that determines what you're attending is behind your attention, so to speak. As in, it's not something you can also attend, because if you do, you make it into another thing. I'm insisting on this because if you start attempting at least to see it like this, you cannot not include yourself in that experience. In other words, it ceases to be abstract pondering with this. You are part of that picture. Your experience right here, right now, it's part of what you're trying to understand. Because if I'm attending at this and it's determined by something else that I cannot attend that's simultaneously there, which is behind my attention. As in, I can't just, okay, so what is that thing? Because if I attend to it, it's behind. It's behind from the direction of your attention. So what's behind? It's that peripheral that I talk about, that you can discern. So while you attend the cup, you can see there is feeling present, there is intention present, without, stopping your attention to the cup. You see there's a decision present, there are views present, basically. But if you look at them directly, they become a new thing, which means something else is then peripheral to it. So you can't have it both to the same extent. So it's perfectly fine to contemplate that principle on the level of senses. What you refer to in terms of the being and the more refined ways of the same principle will be once you are just fully discerning the peripheral in regard to your attending, then you can attend to that peripheral in that non-attentive manner, so to speak, indirectly. Because that's what it means like obtaining jhanas at will. Like you know exactly where they are in relation to establishing your mind. And you can't establish them just through perception or through looking or through doing something, but because you became so skilled in discerning the peripheral domain of mindfulness, you could just literally attend it in that indirect manner, and that's it. In the same manner you...
And kind of see like obviously that's the level.
You can see it without having to look at it. That's what I'm talking about. So the more you practice that, the more you get to see without having to attend it and look at it directly. And that's what I mean, the problem of Puthujjana and the notion of his being is, it's real what I can look, what I can perceive, the problem of method, what I can do. Which means, for as long as he focused on the content of what he's perceiving, he's not going to see the nature of it. And nature is that peripheral that I refer to. That's why the Buddha said knowledge comes after perception. Of course, you can understand that you collect the information of perception, then you figure out the knowledge, but you can also understand it in a simultaneous manner. It's after. Like this is perceived, and it's all over based on that, but it's not it. Knowledge is not the perception. It comes after it.
So can we say then, with the example I gave, that I would recognize, let's use that word instead of attend, a phenomena of being, and see implicit in it, so to say, the assumptions of that are simultaneously present to fuel it.
Yes, but you won't recognize it if you start thinking, oh, I should be recognizing the phenomenon of being. It's discerned.
Yes.
And then the information you have about what you're supposed to discern, it's going to be recognized then. So if you dwell on the principle, sufficient enough, you start discerning, okay, that's what it means. But if you take it as an object of, okay, the being must recognize, but it won't work like that.
Yeah.
That is the level of abstract. That's the difference.
Yeah, you can't think about your being, so to speak.
Yeah.
You can only be your being.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's all the problems of the Western classical and existential philosophy. There's no being without thinking, but you can't think your being. From Descartes to Sartre, and they couldn't figure it out because they took the sense of self for granted.
It's almost like you said, the order, like you see your thinking as secondary to the being, rightly speaking. You can only think about your being because you be.
But without thinking, you wouldn't be.
So they're determined.
Yeah.
Secondary only by structure, yeah?
Well, it determines each other basically. Thinking means you are because you think. It's a valid recognition of Descartes and others, but now you need to. That's where the Dhamma starts. That's where the philosophy ended. They couldn't go further than that. But that's where Dhamma begins. That's where Dhamma goes beyond. It's ataka vachara. You can't think it in that sense. Doesn't mean it's mystical. It means it's not on the level of reasoning and logic. Because that already is secondary to the being. Let's get back to practical matters. Because all this would be extension of the same thing I'm talking about. But you don't need to go to it through philosophical ponderings.
Can we clarify that
Which one?
statement? The notion that for me,
I just, as I did when you asked about Paticampada, like you can think in that manner and you could say, yeah, it's correct according to principle, but to some extent you're leaving yourself out. As in your sense of self right here, right now, in this experience as a whole, it's not included. The only way to include it is to start discerning the peripheral that's peripheral to your sense of self as well, not just to the object of your attention. So then you will force yourself to be included, which means that any discernment, any understanding that happens will happen on that level. And it will be measured by the feeling and absence of dukkha, if done rightly. Because again, it's not that you make understanding of impermanence and non-control pleasurable or resulting in freedom. That's just how things are. If things were not truly impermanent, again, freedom from suffering would not be possible. But they are truly impermanent, so freedom from suffering is possible. But only for those who discerned it. And that's what I mean, like, the measure of your understanding is inability to suffer until you become completely an arahant, of course, by which time you will be quite certain and quite confident in it. But even before arahantship, the absence of suffering, not because you're avoiding it, not because you're managing it, not because you're very skilled in managing, not because nothing challenges you, but because you're unable to suffer amidst suffering. Suffering becomes inconceivable. You don't need to do anything on account of it because he didn't touch you in the first place. Well, we spoke a couple of weeks ago, Thero. You don't grieve, you don't lament because he didn't touch you in the first place. But that didn't touch you in the first place, it's not an accident. It's not something you stumble upon or something that happened to you. It's something you discerned. You discerned the place where it won't touch you in the first place. Suffering. Hence, whatever is to be obtained by manly effort, manly reflection, manly this, are obtained. That's what Buddha would say. It's not given, it hasn't occurred. Oh, I had this experience, must mean I'm free from suffering.
going back then to the first sutta he read, the other counterpart of it was that, what was it, unremitting effort or something like that?
Oh yeah.
So
Well, see, I don't know how people individually think, but based on what I've seen whenever this passage would be quoted, people would perceive unremitting effort means I determine it. I determine it so hard that I'll never give it up. But it's not. It's not the result of your will and volition. It's a result of your understanding that establishes your mind into the unwavering effort. And then my sinews can go, whatever, effort won't cease. In the same sense, a monk would establish his mind upon the perception of the forest, then go to the village. Whatever happens in the village doesn't overwhelm his mind, because his mind is established upon the greater perception. So, establish your mind upon a perception of unwavering effort. Discern it as an independent phenomena, independent of your doing. Because whatever has the nature of arising, has the nature of ceasing, means whatever has the nature of arising has arisen independently of your sense of self, including your very effort. So yeah, you need to do it first in order to discern it as a phenomena, and if you do, then that unremitting effort, it's effortless. You're not doing it. The only reason you thought you were doing it because you thought you could do it.
Technically, it can persist as long as the fire aggregate persists.
Pretty much.
I'm glad you explained it like that, because I think effort in particular is a hard thing to grasp as something you're not doing in the same way we've been speaking about the doing.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, that's true. You just kind of, in a way of speaking, find yourself efforting, and in a way of speaking. I guess you could say you bring your mind to it, but then endures as long as it does. You say.
Well, if you start losing the perception of the phenomenon of effort enduring, that's where you we would say arouse energy for the unreasoned wholesome states. But once they're there, I'm arousing. No, now they're there. Let them endure, because you established it. That's how you establish the mind. And how long it lasts, that's not up to you. That's pretty much predetermined by the clarity of your discernment and that effort. No pun intended. That's why it said in that, was it Chula Vedala? About the jhana. It says, a monk doesn't think, I'm about to attain jhana, or I'm getting into jhana. His mind gets set beforehand, established, and then the jhana is established. And it lasts for as long as that previous sort of setup has determined it to last. It's not up to him.
So when you say arousal of energy, then that has to be seen in the same context, not doing.
Eventually, yes, but you're gonna go through some pain of saying no to the unwholesome and so on, like having to endure that discrepancy, say no to the pull. But yeah, once you start discerning that as a phenomenon, then it becomes effortless.
Like the arousal of energy is
in the ultimate sense, from Arahant's point of view, it's effortless. But as I said, Puthujjana starts from the other end, and that is his reality. So it's gonna take some actual doing of saying no, withstanding things, saying no to the pull, and so on. But again, doing it for its own sake won't result in any liberation. But doing it and then understanding the nature of that doing, that can result. And then it becomes effortless. Then you're not doing it. Then you're not doing sila nor your duty of a monk. It's not done. It's there, but you are not doing it. So sila bhata paramasa is gone. So you really want to develop that? Same. I think that's what we recorded pretty much, wasn't it? I was mentioning the same things in that, like, non-activity.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
Yeah.
Yes. Effort, actually, like this unremitting effort, sounds pretty much on the same level as non-activity.
It is, yeah. If you discern non-activity correctly, that is effortless. But your state is the state of established effort. Like, you need to establish something until it takes root, until it takes place. Then you don't have to, because it's there.
It seems to me almost like you could describe it as indirect, so to speak. Like, it's not like you clench your fists necessarily, but more like by refraining and, doing that effort of restraining.
Pretty
that's
much,
how you're
yeah.
arousing.
Any
energy.
any discernment of the phenomena, it's pretty much indirect. You can't attend to it. As you said, you can't attend to the being of a thing. You can discern it. So, but once you start discerning it, that is, you realize, well, it's directly indirect, basically. It's direct knowledge of the indirect way. It's not you have to go through these indirect motions that will result into it. That's only the beginning, because you're looking at the wrong place. Like, against the grain is indirect from with the grain of Patujana. But once against the grain becomes your mode of being, that's the direct mode of being. And you abandon the with the grain. That's why the result of that discernment is abandonment of these things. As in, you can't, okay, I'm anagami, I had a good time, now I want to go back and do what Patujana. No, it becomes, it's abandoned. Because the other way became your mode of being, and it's irreversible. Why? Because ignorance was never supposed to be there. It's beginningless, but there is no first point from which ignorance wasn't, and then it became, as the Buddha said himself. So once you undo it, it cannot take root again.
So there is a slight mimic of abandonment in restraint.
Well, if you understand the nature of restraint, without understanding, it won't happen by accident. Understanding can't happen by accident.
I was thinking of the fact that I was
Referring to abandonment. Well, no, it is a form of abandonment, just not a complete form that you want to be aiming at. No, of course, it's a form of abandonment.